Today, we're getting inside the mind of one of Silicon Valley's most enduring and controversial figures, Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle.
And we have a really unique way in. We're using the book Soft to War by Matthew Simmons, which isn't just a biography. Ellison himself read it and then added his own footnotes.
Right, so it's him correcting the record in real time. You get these brutally frank conversations and then his own commentary on those conversations. It's an amazing look at how his mind works.
Exactly. So our mission for you today is to really get to the core of what drove him. We want to understand his contradictory traits, some of those huge early bets, and the restless energy that's kept him at the top for, 50 years?
A journey from this rebel programmer to a ruthless corporate strategist, a guy fighting his own demons while taking on the biggest names in tech.
Yeah, that's the story.
Okay, so let's start with that contrarian mindset. The book makes it clear he is his own harshest critic. I mean, relentlessly so.
Oh, absolutely. A huge chunk of the book is just him being completely embarrassed by his own performance as CEO for the first, decade and a half.
And that connects to his view of the past, right? He has, and this is a quote, extraordinarily little interest in the recent past.
Yeah, but at the same time, he's obsessed with reading history, ancient history, modern history. He wants the big patterns, the strategy, not, what happened last quarter.
His best friend for 25 years, Steve Jobs, had a great line about this. He said, if something turns out pretty good, you should just go do something else wonderful and not dwell on it for too long.
And Ellison lives that. He's always focused on the next 5 years.
This brings us to his work style, which is so different from someone like, say, Bill Gates.
Right. Gates was the methodical grinder, day in, day out. Ellison is the complete opposite.
He calls himself a sprinter, not a grinder. His whole process is, I rest, I sprint, I rest, I sprint again, which, drove people crazy. It totally explains the paradox of his CEO tenure. He never even wanted the job. He'd get bored, vanish for weeks, leave the business to his team.
And then he'd come back and swing between what the author calls apathetic indifference and complete obsession.
So he was constantly getting criticized for opposite things. He's too dominant and controlling. No, wait, he's too detached and doesn't care.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
And it really perfectly illustrates one of his favorite maxims, which is pretty dark.
What's that?
He says, the brain's primary purpose is deception, and the number one person to be deceived is yourself.
Wow. I mean, if you actually believe your own mind is trying to trick you, you'd question everything, every single instinct.
You'd have to. It forces you to be relentlessly self-critical. Now, if we go back to his early career, it actually took him a long time to find his footing. He never saw himself as disciplined.
But then programming clicks. It was like total liberation for him.
Yeah, freelance contract programming was perfect for his short attention span. He could just dive in, code like a maniac for a few days, make great money, and then check out. The sprinter model again.
It was freedom from what he called absurd conventions, dress codes, showing up on time, all that. The computer just didn't care.
Right. Wear jeans, work at 3 a.m. If you solve the problem faster and better, you win. Simple.
But that intensity, that kind of singular focus, it definitely had a personal cost.
Oh, a huge one. He had this brutally honest reflection. He said his first wife left him because he didn't work enough, and his second left him because he worked too much.
So the one constant was a lack of compromise.
Exactly. And when he started the company that became Oracle, his initial ambition was surprisingly small.
Yeah, he was just aiming for, 10 million in revenue and 50 people?
That's it. The goal wasn't world domination. It was about controlling his own environment, not doing things he hated, not spending time with people he didn't like. It was about freedom.
But he made a huge strategic pivot almost right away. They started in consulting, which he found, just tedious.
Way too much work. He realized the real power was in the software product business. He called it the ultimate leverage. Build it once and sell it over and over.
And the idea for that first product was just a brilliant high-risk move. They basically took IBM research papers on a relational database and used them as a blueprint.
The key insight, though, was his observation that no one else was even trying to build a commercial version. The market was wide open.
He always seemed to prefer the high-risk path if it meant less competition. He stayed away from the IBM mainframe market everyone was fighting over.
Look, he said he'd only pick the highest risk approach if he thought it would increase our chance of winning. It was about finding an empty battlefield.
And you can see that marketing flair from day one. He called the first version of their database Oracle version 2.
Classic. Just pure savvy. He knew nobody would buy version 1 from, 5 guys in California. They had to look more established than they were.
And who was their first customer?
The CIA, which was the perfect anchor. Once you have the CIA, you can go to Navy intelligence, Air Force intelligence, the NSA. It cemented their reputation in the high-stakes defense world.
But all that early success was kind of masking a time bomb, wasn't it?
A huge one. That sprinter mentality just did not scale to running a big public company.
Which brings us to 1991, the near-death experience. And what's wild is that his motivation to save the company was apparently deeply personal.
Yeah, it all came back to his adoptive father telling him he would never amount to anything. He said he just couldn't prove his father right. That fear was the fuel.
The company was so close to bankruptcy, the stock fell 80%.
And the cause was this massive accounting and sales crisis. It was all built on a practice of booking what they called phantom revenue.
Right, let's unpack that. It wasn't just about shipping software that wasn't ready.
No, it was worse. The sales team would book these multi-year contracts and then recognize all of that future revenue immediately for accounting, even though the cash wasn't there.
So they were basically celebrating future money as if it was cash in the bank today. It was a complete fantasy.
Until the bills came due. And Ellison had to face his own failures. He flat out admitted he was incompetent as a CEO back then.
And he made that crucial distinction. He said his style wasn't delegation, it was abdication.
He just ignored everything that didn't interest him. Sales, accounting, legal. He was only doing the fun part, the engineering.
That's when he realized the real challenge in tech isn't the software, it's the human problem, it's incentives.
Exactly. The old Charlie Munger quote, right? Show me the incentive and I will show you the outcome. Oracle's incentives were completely broken.
The salespeople were getting these huge commissions for convincing existing customers to buy software they didn't even need yet, just to make the quarterly numbers look good.
Right. So the sales team won, but Oracle was the only loser in the long run. They were discounting their own future.
And this led him to see the difference between hunters and farmers. The U.S. sales team were hunters, all about the big one-time kill.
Which he realized was short-sighted and unsustainable. The European teams were farmers, building long-term relationships, much healthier.
He also figured out a huge blind spot in his hiring. He was just hiring smart people and assuming they'd be good at the job.
Yeah, until a colleague finally confronted him and said, "Yeah, Larry, he's very smart, but can he do his fucking job?"
Ouch. The lesson being that brilliance without execution is useless.
And that's the turning point. After the crisis, he decided he had to engineer every single process in my company.
Right.
Sales, marketing, everything.
He started seeing complexity as the cardinal sin of the computing industry, and Oracle itself was a mess.
Oh, a total mess. He had this great analogy. Other tech companies were like Detroit, selling car parts, a Honda engine, a Ford transmission, and telling the customer, good luck, you assemble it.
And internally they had, 70 different HR systems?
70. They were paying a fortune to not know how many people actually worked there. He said they had data everywhere and not a drop of information.
He also had to break up the feudal structure. He called himself a weak king, with these powerful general managers acting like independent dukes, doing whatever they wanted.
The pricing committee was the perfect example. 200 people around the world setting prices. They were competing with themselves.
So his fix was to cut that team down to less than 10 people. He wanted creativity out of the sales process. Make it standardized.
Now, this leads to his biggest strategic bet of all, the internet.
Right. In the mid-90s, everyone thought the internet would kill the database market. He saw the complete opposite.
He saw it as a platform for a completely different and infinitely superior kind of computing. His mantra became, the internet changes everything.
And he didn't just dip his toe in, he went all in, the burning the boats approach.
Totally. To the horror of his team, he stopped all development on their existing client-server applications.
Which was a massive deal. That client-server model meant installing heavy software on every single computer. It was a nightmare to maintain.
By ditching it and going all in on a centralized internet architecture, he forced everyone else to play catch-up. Microsoft, IBM, they all became followers.
And even the naming mattered. He changed the product from network computing architecture to internet computing architecture, and sales just exploded.
It was brilliant. Which brings us to his other key strategy, picking enemies.
Yeah.
He always said Oracle is at its best when it has an enemy to fight.
And he didn't pick small fights. He went after Microsoft and IBM to position Oracle as a software heavyweight.
The media loved it. The battle of the billionaires. It was free marketing that made Oracle's ideas seem bigger.
He had this ruthless take on Microsoft. He called them a rogue rhinoceros. He completely rejected the idea that you should be nice to the alligator and maybe he'll eat you last.
His version was, let's kill the fucking alligator before he kills us.
Right.
Pure aggression.
So when you look back, you see all these paradoxes. The accidental CEO who becomes this incredibly fierce competitor.
And the genius who finally admits he's terrible at the day-to-day execution.
Which is why he hired people to cover his weaknesses. He brought in Safra Catz because she was disciplined and thorough, everything he knew he wasn't.
He was a sprinter. He'd solve the big problem, get bored, and move on. She was the one who could execute and follow through.
And underneath it all, his motivation was always more about fear than greed, fear of failure.
Absolutely. He said, Silicon Valley is a killing field. That memory of almost going bankrupt in '91 never left him.
So what about all the bravado, the famous confidence that rubs so many people the wrong way?
He saw it as a tool, a necessary part of leadership. He had this analogy about two officers leading Marines up a hill. One is calm and confident. The other is honest about all his fears and doubts.
Who do you follow?
Nobody follows the honest, uncertain guy. He believed you have to project absolute conviction, even if it's an act, to get people to follow you into a fight.
And finally, after he got everything he wanted, that freedom he was aiming for at the start, he found it was actually really hard to manage.
Right, because suddenly you have all these choices. Necessity isn't driving you anymore.
So his big conclusion, the deepest insight maybe, is that you have to figure out what you truly love to do. And if you can't,
then you settle for doing something that's important. That's how you navigate a world of infinite choice.
And here's the final thought for you to chew on. Maybe his ultimate leadership lesson. He said you can never really know anyone's true motives, not even your own. So you're better off measuring people by what they do rather than the unknowable why. Just focus on action, not intention.